John Droz is a central New York native who is an independent physicist. He still has a summer home in the Adirondacks at Brandingham Lake. He retired from a management job at GE at age 34 some 40 years ago, and that gave him the time to get involved in a variety of local, state, and national matters that he has an interest in. Briefly, he's very involved with the 4 E's: energy, environment, education, and elections. Through his popular and free Media Balance newsletter, he's assembled an informal coalition of 10,000-plus individuals, and about 700 of them have PhDs. That led him to putting together a team of experts who, since November, have now published 10 major reports on election integrity. These are all found on their webpage, election-integrity.info. He'll fill you in a bit more on the details coming up. We're pleased today to have John share some unique perspectives in his talk today about election integrity. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Droz.
I think a lot applies to what we're talking about here today. I also have to make this declaration because at one of my prior ABC talks, a European person asked whether I was just recycling a talk I had given elsewhere. I don't know why he asked that, but that's what he said. The answer was no then, and it's no today. So this is the first time I've given this talk in any way, shape, or form. Okay, fair enough? Just to clear the air. Election integrity seems to be simple enough, but there's actually quite a bit to this, starting with its profound importance. For example, all of our policies, energy policies, et cetera, start with who was elected. You've been deluged with a lot of misinformation from the mainstream media, and we're going to talk about that today. Regarding the complexity part, it's hard to get a chart on the screen here that is readable, but this is a tiny little example. Because once you get into the nuts and bolts about how our voting process works, it's substantially more technical than you may seem, or that you're aware of. So this is a simplified outline of it. So this is what my plan of action is today. First of all, I'm going to explain why I'm the person that got the privilege of giving this talk. Second question we're going to briefly discuss is widespread fraud necessary to steal an election. Third, what election problems we do have, are they intentional or accidental? Fourth is, what are the main types of election problems? And then we're going to talk about these 3 main types. Because I'm recommending an audit called a forensic audit. That's a more detailed, thorough type of audit for voters, machines, and the election process. Those are the 3 areas where there's problems. And lastly, we'll wrap it up with conclusions and some Q&A, and we'll all be done within an hour. Okay? So, election integrity, what is that? Well, without making this too complicated, I suggest election integrity means that we have highly accurate elections. In other words, the results are the actual sum of all legally cast votes and of only legally cast votes. That's it. So my talk is based on the assumption today that everyone here is interested in election integrity. If not, you probably come to the wrong room. But that's what I'm building my assumption on. So, first question we said we're going to answer is, why did ABC pick me? Good question. Briefly, the answer is that later last year, I received a phone call out of the blue from a national attorney, someone who I didn't know. She said she was speaking for a group of attorneys investigating the 2020 election. And she asked me whether I was interested in putting together a team of experts to analyze election data. As I say, this is all out of the blue, so this is pretty much of a surprise. Who are you? Why are you asking me this? Later, I'm trying to be brief here. So later, I surmised that she called because of my newsletter. As Paul said, I have over 10,000 subscribers to this. Been doing this for 12 years. It's free, comes out every 2 weeks. And over 700 of these subscribers are PhDs. So that's a pretty high proportion of PhDs on any list. And so I think she knew that. And so she knew I had connections with some educated people. So she was right. So what I did was that I told the Lord that I was interested, but, and I would see if some of these experts were also. So I went through my list of subscribers. I keep a detailed list, and I called 6 people who had PhDs in relevant fields, like statistics, as an example. The gratifying thing to me was when I asked these people, are you interested in volunteering free time to look at election data? Every single one said yes. Nobody said qualified, or nobody said no, I'm too busy. Every single one said yes. And believe me, these are busy people. So that was a good thing. So I called the attorney back and said, okay, I have a team of six experts plus me, and that they include some of the fields that show there: cybersecurity, IT, statistics, physics, economics, so forth. They all had one and only one objective. None of them asked me about politics or Trump or Biden or anybody else. They said, we're just interested in election integrity. So we just want to make sure our system here is on the up and up. So that's all we have as an interest. So when I went back to this attorney and said, okay, so I said, what do you want us to do? So she said, okay, I'd like you to analyze this data for Pennsylvania. So she sent me a pile of disorganized data. I'm not exactly like this, but it was electronic data, but it was, I didn't write down a polite word here. It was a mess. So I asked her, how much time do we have to analyze this data and give them a report back? And she said, well, 2 days. Really? I mean, she was serious. Well, they were all under the gun here at this time. This was November. They were considering electoral college, and a lot of other stuff was going on. So it wasn't like she was totally unreasonable, but, you know, for just throwing this at us and say 2 days. Well, the good thing was that we did a 50-page report on Pennsylvania data. She gave us 50 pages in 4 days. Not too bad. Now, do you want to see this report? It's, as Paul said, these are all on one page we have on the internet called election-integrity.info. I'm going to mention this several times, so you're going to know it by the time you go. But that's the first one. The list we have on that page is chronological. So this is the very first one. So you can see what we did. We were all just independent experts here trying to analyze this pile of data. So this is the cover sheet of that report, what it looks like. I was the editor. I didn't analyze the data. I was the team leader or whatever. And they gave me, the 6 experts gave me this data, and I had to sort of translate it so that it was understandable by real people. Because, you know, they were academics and talking in highfalutin 10-syllable words, stuff like that. So I tried to digest it so they were somewhat intelligible. You can decide for yourself whether I succeeded or not. In addition, I tried to minimize certain words that may be not only inaccurate, but inflammatory, like fraud, as an example. It's a good example. So I scrubbed any reference of fraud out of our reports here. I'm just showing you, I did that. And the reason is that fraud has legal implications and so forth. And in analyzing data, we have no business saying fraud was involved. We can say, this is really, really unusual, but that doesn't prove fraud legally. So our reports, I'm just telling you, don't say anything about stuff like fraud. And I'm telling you because of my view on that. So anyways, back to the story of our first report. So of course, the group of lawyers who originally called me had no idea what to expect from us, but they were quite pleased with the result. So I started hearing from a lot more people. Once they saw what we did, I heard from a lot of people, other lawyers, other people involved in the election process here. And people like Sidney Powell, you know, somebody I never knew before, but I'm just saying this is the type of person who started calling me. I'm not saying I agree with everything he does or not, but these people thought I had some credibility here, or my team did anyway. So I heard from these people. So After that, they then sent me another pile of data, and this one was from Michigan, and asked us to do the same type of thing, and we did. So this is our second report. It was a little more condensed than the first. This is only 30-some pages. So, but that worked out pretty well. And another interesting thing is that there are now over 30 organizations that have identified election integrity as one of their priorities, which is pretty surprising. A lot of things like this have sort of a short news cycle, but this doesn't seem to have gone away. This seems to have had traction for quite some time, so surprisingly so. And I've been involved, as Paul was saying, I've been rehearsed since 34. That was 41 years ago. So I've been involved in these type of things for a long time. I can tell you the duration, the traction that this issue has had is a bit surprising, but it does. So anyways, these are some of the organizations that are involved. There's more than that. So here's a picture of our page, a part of a picture. There's more to it, just so I could have on that be legible to you. And as I said, these are arranged in chronological order. So you see the first two are Michigan, or Pennsylvania and Michigan. So if you want to see exactly what we're doing and why, you go and look at it. See for yourself, whether we know what we're talking about or whatever. But I think you'll find, by and large, it's credible. So that's as brief as I can make it as to why ABC invited me to come. Okay, so any sense to that? If not, speak to Paul. Okay, so part two is, the next question, as we said on our list, was, is widespread fraud necessary to steal an election? Well, why I ask that is, that's the mainstream media's mantra, basically. They've said this hundreds of times, just Google it. And they said there's no proof of widespread fraud, election fraud. Well, this word widespread is a significant word. They said there's no proof of election fraud. They're saying widespread. So that's the question. Is widespread a necessity or not? So we're going to talk about that. So the statement, like a lot of what the media says, in my opinion, is premised on the belief that most citizens don't use critical thinking. Unfortunately, they may be right. Hopefully, for those who took the time out of their busy life to come here today, that's not true for you. Using critical thinking today, we're going to try to decide whether that assertion is accurate and appropriate. So to start with, we need to be clear about our expectations. I said election integrity means we have highly accurate elections. But what does highly accurate mean? I'm going to ask you, as critical thinking people here, to give me an answer here. So be prepared to raise your hand. Ready? So I'm going to ask three questions. So the first question is, I want you to answer for me this. If we have 95% vote accuracy, how many of you believe that that is excellent, good, or poor? So how many believe that that would be excellent if we had 95% vote integrity? Okay. How many believe it'd be good if we had 95%? All right. How many say it would be poor if we had 95%? Okay, that seems to be the largest number. Okay, good. Again, I'm asking your opinion. So here's a follow-up question. If we ask, we have 99% vote integrity. We're gonna ask the same question. How many believe that that would be excellent? 99% vote integrity. Okay, how many think that would be good? 99% integrity. All right, and last, how many think 99% would be poor? Okay, so we had some answers for everyone. So my last question, and this is just an opinion, what if we have 99.9%? Well, these are the real world things we have to think about. We have to decide what constitutes voter integrity. What degree of accuracy is important to us. That's something we as citizens have to decide. So you need to think about this one way or the other. So same question again. How many people think if we have 99.9% vote accuracy that that would be excellent? All right. How many think it would be good? Okay. How many think it would be poor? Okay, some people still saying poor. Okay. So I guess we got to add another digit there. Okay, here's my answers. Okay. Now, they say these are somewhat subjective, but I picked these numbers because, in my opinion, they fall into three different categories. That's why I picked them. But it's my opinion. So you can quibble and say, John, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Fine. Other people said that before you. So I'm saying that's what I believe. 95% would be poor, 99% would be good, 99%, 99.9 would be excellent. So now I'm going to give you my explanation as to why I'm saying that. Okay. So why is 99%, 95% vote accuracy poor? Well, the reason is in 2020, there were approximately 160 million votes cast nationally. So a 95% accuracy would mean that there's about 8 million inaccurate votes. Well, 8 million is a lot, right? Trump lost the countrywide vote by 7 million, as an example here to put it in perspective. So let's say there's two possibilities here. Let's be simplified. One possibility is that 8 million, there were 8 million fraudulent votes for Biden that shouldn't have been credited to him. Let's just say that's a possibility, okay? I'm not saying that's the case, but let's just say that. If we have 8 million that are inaccurate, they have to fall into some category. So if that was the case, that would mean that Trump would have won the national vote. Let's say, on the other hand, that the 8 million inaccurate votes were fraudulent votes for Biden that should have gone to Trump. That's a different thing that say they shouldn't just have been counted, but they should have gone otherwise. Well, that would mean a 16 million vote difference. That's a lot. That's a real lot. So instead of Biden winning by 7 million, Trump would have won by 9 million. I mean, a profoundly significant difference here, just by that 5% error here. So I'm just, again, I'm not saying any of that happened. I'm just saying we need to think about the numbers here as to what would be the implications of a 5% inaccuracy. That 95% ordinarily sounds like a pretty accurate number. But I'm just saying, as far as voter integrity goes, it isn't. Okay? I talked about those things, didn't show the slides. Okay, now why is the 99% accuracy only good instead of great? It actually is average because that would still mean on this national level, there are 1.6 million inaccurate votes. Now, is that enough to make a national difference? Well, if we look at this on our list of reports here, the third vote says election spikes. So what we did was, our team of statistical people, we looked at every spike in every single state and categorized them. And it turns out all of the spikes happened in favor of Biden. So we added these up here and showed what the bottom line is here. So you go to page 25 of that report, you'll see the impact of such spikes. We're just going to look at 4 states here now on the impact of these spikes. This table explains that the unexpected voting patterns in just 4 states changed the national result. Just 4 states. In fact, if any of these 3 results were reversed, Trump would have won the election. That's how simplified or how close this was in some regards from a statistical point of view. So 3 of these, if 3 of these had changed, Trump would have won the election. So my point is, from this table here, it's quite clear that 1.6 million inaccurate votes strategically placed could make a lot of difference. So I'm saying a 0.9% vote is an excellent result. We can never have perfection, of course. But in my view, this is the type of percentage we need to get to ensure that we have election integrity. This still means there'd be 160,000 votes that are inaccurate, but on a national level, that would be much harder to sway the national results. This is the point. Point of this exercise is to have you understand that the mainstream media is purposely trying to corrupt your thinking regarding election results here. They repeatedly hang their head on there's not being widespread election results. And I'm trying to show you that even a 1% inaccuracy could easily change the national results here. 1%. But widespread is not necessary. Okay, number 3, what are the intentions behind any problems that there are here? So my simplified, we're going to be simple here, is that the problems could either be purposeful or accidental. So here's some purposeful, what I would call purposeful actions. And that would be things like people voting twice. Ordinarily, that's not an accident. Voting machines having an algorithm inside the software that changes the result. That's not an accident. Stuffing the ballot box after hours with fraudulent votes. That's not an accident. On the other hand, there are some accidental things. So citizens can carelessly check both candidates on a ballot. Voting machines can have a mechanical failure. Election officials can misinterpret the law regarding the handling of absentee ballots. So those are accidents. These things happen, right? So as you're thinking, as you go along here, what percentage of the voting problems are in one category or another? Do you know what the answer is? Nobody knows what the answer is. So no, I don't know what the answer is. The only way we'd possibly know the answer to that is to have much more extensive audits, forensic audits. So that's one of the things we're going to more get into here, but that's the only way we can know. Everything else is just pretty much speculation. So we have no idea whether it's 50-50 or 60-40 or 90-10. We don't know, but I can tell you 100% certainty there are things in both those categories, but how much percentage, I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is that with a high degree of certainty that the purposeful parts would be more likely to be focused on the swing states, and some of those were in the table I showed you before here. Bad actors are not likely going to waste much time in changing votes in states where they're going to win anyways. Why should they increase the risk of getting caught when there's little upside for them is the point. So this would be my opinion. Again, I said that we don't have proof of this. This is an opinion. In the swing states, there are a higher rate of vote inaccuracies, and a higher percentage of these vote inaccuracies are perfect. That's what I would conclude from the data we've seen here. Okay, so what are the types of problems that we're talking about here? Well, from our analysis here, they fall into 3 categories. Voter type of problems, machine type of problems, and processing type of problems. For example, so these are one example in each of those categories. Did only legally eligible citizens vote and vote just once? That would be a voter matter. Did the voting machines accurately report all ballots received without any modification? That would be a machine matter. Did third parties illegally change or delete any legitimate ballots or add ballots? That would be a processing matter. Well, those are the 3 general type of things. There's other things that fall into those. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what those things are. But the only way we can be absolutely sure of these and which quantities there are to do what's called a full forensic audit. In each of these 3 areas. So it's an audit, it's really 3 different types of audits packaged into one thing here. So, how many states have done a full forensic audit of the 2020 elections? 0. How many counties in the United States have done a full forensic audit of the 2020 election results? 0. How many states have done a partial forensic audit? You know what state that is? No. Good guess, but no. Any other guess? Nevada is the answer. You're right. Okay. Nevada. We're going to explain that in a minute. How many counties have done a partial forensic audit? 3. Now, this is where Maricopa County comes in. This is a county. See, The state of Arizona did not do something, the county did. So I'm a scientist here, so we're going to be careful of our words. So that was a county audit. So they are giving credit for doing a county partial forensic audit, not a full forensic audit, not a full, a partial. So the good thing is we actually have examples of partial forensic audits for each of those three categories. So we can see what a good one should be by looking at these three examples I'm going to give you. Okay, so now we're going to go into those three examples. First one is of voters. Since you still have your critical thinking cap on, and please don't remove it. Remember that voting accuracies, again, I'm going to keep reminding you this, fall into these three categories: voting machines, and or vote processing. So the difference between these will become apparent, but let's start with the first one and look at an amazing study headed up by attorney Jesse Banal about the integrity of just the voter part for the entire state of Nevada. He put together a team of experts and they exhaustively went through public records and compared those to the data of people who actually voted. So he has the name of the people who vote. He has the names of these people looked up on public records. This is not a statistical analysis. So he testified before Congress here under oath in public, and it was all recorded on TV, and no one has come forward to dispute any part of what he said, disprove anything he said. Here are the findings he has. 1,500 people that were dead are recorded as voting. 4,000 non-citizens voted. 8,000 people voted from non-existent addresses. 15,000 people, well, these are approximately, of course, votes were cast from commercial or vacant lot addresses. 19,000 people voted even though they did not live in the state. 42,000 people voted more than once. All in all, this is a quote from him out of his report. It's all posted on our website there. All in all, our experts identified over 130,000 unique instances. So the question is, were some of these duplicated? Okay, he said there's over 130,000 unique instances of voter fraud in Nevada. But the actual number, I'm reading from his quote here, from the actual number is almost certainly higher. Our data scientists made these calculations not by estimations or statistical sampling, but by analyzing and comparing the list of actual voters to other lists, most of which are publicly available. Our evidence has never been refuted, only ignored. So, is again, some more perspective. 130,000 fraudulent votes. Well, Trump lost Nevada by 33,000 votes. Again, this is not a general statistical analysis because he has the names. He has the names of these people. The names of these people. I spoke to him personally about this report and said to him, despite publicly saying under oath and so forth that he had the names of every one of these people and the evidence, that what did the state do about this? And he said, I've never heard from the state. They've never asked for any of this. Further, he told me, as far as he knows, not a single person out of those 130,000 documented cases has had any lawsuit against them or any penalty imposed against them. That was what you said for me, so I don't know whether that's 100% true, but he's following this pretty closely. Another point of perspective here is that out of these 130,000 documented cases of apparent fraud, that translates to only a 90% vote integrity here. Now, again, that's without looking at the other parts, not looking at machine problems or process problems. This is just in the voter integrity part. If those parts are perfect, that would result in a 90% accuracy. We already decided that 99.9 was what we needed, right? Yes, thank you. Right. Okay, so this shows how far off we are compared to 99.9%. Significant way off. My point is that a forensic voter analysis was done in only one state, and the evidence said that there was widespread fraud. And then one state, where it's done, was widespread. So in response to the media's repeated assertion that there is no proof of widespread fraud, I've already shown you why widespread fraud is not necessary to change the election results. Now we have concrete evidence that there was some widespread fraud where it was looking into. How much more voter fraud is there? We have no idea. None whatsoever, because there's almost no other forensic audits being done. Partial forensic audit, I'm very familiar with this. Know the guys doing it, talk to them, blah, blah, blah. It's a partial forensic audit. It does not do as thorough job as done in Nevada. And the work statement doesn't require, it only requires a sampling of the voters. And the reason this guy, Doug Logan, his name, gave me was that, well, a couple of things. One was Arizona started out with a budget, said, okay, what can you do for 150,000? And there were some time constraints, stuff like that. So they gave him a work order, said, this is what we can do. And it didn't include doing this other stuff. Okay, so we're going on to the next here. Part 6, forensic audit of voting machines. A good example, in my opinion, is the Ramsden study in Michigan County. A reminder, those are 3 things. Russ Ramsden heads, somebody else I know here now, heads the Allied Security Operation Group. Their business specializes in cybersecurity matters. Here's what happened. In the 2020 election, 63% of the voters in a Republican leaning by registrations and so forth, Antrim County, Michigan, supposedly voted for Biden. That raised suspicions. After complaints were lodged, the election officials begrudgingly looked into it and said, oops, looks like we screwed up here. And actually, it was the reverse. Trump had actually won 61% of the vote instead of Biden winning. They attributed this significant error to human error. That was their answer. A few months ago. Yes, this is after, yes. This copy of this report is on our page, election-integrity.info. You can look it all up. So what happened was they said, how much more, they wanted to look up some further rocks here. So a lawsuit was filed and a judge ordered that an audit of the county's voting machines, this county, Antrim County, Michigan. So Ramsden organization was hired to investigate the machine, and they were made by a company called Dominion. And by the way, Dominion machines and its software are used in 24 states and 48 other counties in Michigan. Correct my date here. On December 6th, he did the report, okay? We're gonna get to that. Okay. Here's him and some people working on it. On December 6th, Ramsden team was allowed 8 hours, 8 hours to do this investigation, hands-on investigation of 22 different machines and associated, servers, other kind of stuff. 8 freaking hours. Despite this serious limitation, they subsequently published a very damning report. And here's the part of the cover page. Note that it says that Mr. Ramsden, he has an MBA from Harvard. He's also worked for NASA and MIT. In other words, he's no slouch here. And one of the findings they had was, that shows in this report, is the table reflects these are 3 different times the reported votes from the officials, election officials. And you can see every time they made a report, the numbers came out different. So their conclusions were that the Dominion machines intentionally, this is their conclusion, intentionally generate a high number of ballot errors. In this particular case, they found it to be 68%. What happens is that when these errors are identified, they kick them out and somebody has to manually go through, adjudicate them and say, here's what should be done. This is what this person meant or not, so forth. So manual adjudication, the problem with that is that there's no oversight of it. There's no transparency about it. There's no audit trail. It's a Wild West. So what he says here at the end is the adjudication process is the simplest way to manually manipulate the results. I mean, that's his conclusion. So the bottom line here is that none of these machine issues would have been made public had there not been a lawsuit, a receptive judge, and competent investigators. We have no idea how many more cases there are like this in the United States because, to my knowledge, other than Maricopa County, where the formal results haven't been released yet, no one has done a forensic machine audit. The irony is that Democrats are obstructing the machine audits, yet national Democrats here have gone on record saying, for example, how easy it is to fraudulently manipulate these. So we're going to watch what they have to say.
In 2018, machines imported and tested for vehicles for certain candidates or switch and located to another.
Is the only company that violates cybersecurity 101 through record install no access software, which would make a machine like that hackers solutions.
You could easily hack into them. It makes it seem like all the states are doing different things, but in fact, three companies are controlling that. It is the individual that some code that poses the greatest risk. There are a lot of states that are antiquated machines, right? Which are vulnerable.
What was able to easily happen to the electronic voting risk populace switching over 43% of American voters who voted machines. The researchers have found that serious security flaws, including backdoor.
My colleagues here in Canada, we brought in folks who disorganize hacked election machines. Those that are being used in states.
The system also frequently on unsecured software and Windows XP in 2000, which may not include regular security patches that are much more vulnerable to late spends and cyber attacks.
In a close running election, they basically have one state, or maybe just a few counties in one state.
I'm very concerned that you could have hacked the final one through.
Okay, not me saying any of that. Okay, next step is the forensic audit of the process. Interestingly, this here, there's a reminder. Interestingly, this happened in upstate New York, not that far down the road. You've heard of Central New York, right? Good. Okay, I'm from that area, so that's why I'm putting in a plug. Here's a brief version of what happened. Claudia Tenney, a Republican, was running in the U.S. House seat held by a Democrat. There are about 325,000 registered voters in the New York 22 district. At the end of election day, November 4, 2020, Claudia was leading by almost 30,000 votes. One would think that this would be an insurmountable lead, particularly, again, in a Republican leading district, et cetera, et cetera. However, a few days later, after all the absentee, et cetera, votes were counted, her lead had shrunk to an astounding 20 votes. Not 20,000, 20 votes from 30,000. At that point, there was a lawsuit, which was good. What was good about this case was that instead of bailing out on legal technicalities, the judge here actually investigated vote processing. In other words, handling of the ballots by the election officials. After doing that, he put the feet of the election officials to the fire in several counties involved. As they looked under various process rocks, the lead went back and forth. Here, for example, 2 days before Christmas, no less, the Democrat was leading by 14 votes. What's more important, though, is that the judge's official legal public ruling, he formally declared that New York State election officials had violated New York State election laws in at least 9 different ways. Not 9 different times, 9 different ways. These are New York State officials violating New York State law. This is what the judge said. This isn't me saying this. And believe it or not, he was actually bending over not to embarrass the New York State officials. Because if you actually read through his court documents, which I did, there were actually 25 different actions that election officials took or failed to take where he publicly admonished them for being wrong. 25 things they did wrong. We don't have the time to go into each of these 25 process errors that New York State election officials made, but they're all spelled out in detail in Appendix C of this report, which is at electionintegrity.info. This is a good news story, as my friend Claudia, who I do know her somewhat, prevailed in the end. The final vote count approved by the judge and certified by New York State showed that she actually won by 109 votes. This reinforces my earlier point that widespread fraud is not necessary to change election results, right? Once again, bottom line is here that none of these process failings would have been made public had there not been a lawsuit and a receptive, competent judge. Unfortunately, we have no idea how many more cases are like this throughout the country, as no one else is doing a thorough process forensic audit. So we're into our final chapter here. What are our conclusions about all of this? So number one, I hope you agree that we've undermined the mainstream media that there's no proof of widespread fraud. This is their second most widespread meme, that Trump, et cetera, has lost almost every election lawsuit. So we were interested in this. Our team said, well, let's look into this, because we didn't see a detailed analysis of what happened on all these cases. So the result is that we put together report number 7 on electionintegrity.info. And this is, there were several articles written about it, including immediately fact checking. I was fact checked, me personally, by the AP and some other places. And even though they didn't like what my report said, they couldn't find any fault in it. Zero fault. So here's a little picture of part of it to show you what we did. So the left-hand column is all the cases. So if you want to see what exactly the complaint was, what the judge's ruling was, you just click on that link and it brings you to those things here. Then we broke it out several different ways. But the most important thing we broke it out is how many of these cases were decided on the merits. A lot of the cases were dismissed by legal technicalities. They said, well, you've applied too late, or, you know, you're not in the right jurisdiction, or stuff like that. So the bottom line was that out of 90, here's how it's broken out. 39 cases were dismissed because of technicalities. 12 were consolidated, withdrawn. 14 are still open. 18 where the evidence was heard, Trump won. 7 where the evidence was heard, Trump lost. So in other words, 70+% of the lawsuits where evidence was heard, Trump won. Now you tell me where you've seen that in the media. That's the facts. Again, this is not my opinion. This document shows you all the facts. 25 cases were decided on the merit, blah, blah, blah. So my takeaways, my suggested takeaways for you here are that it's important to be a critical thinker in these times here of conflicting information. That you should be skeptical of what you read and hear from the mainstream media. And if we don't do meaningful audits, it's highly likely we will be victimized by bad actors and careless election officials. Whoops. Next thing is, almost last thing here is that I'm still working with some other states that we're expecting to do post-election audits. Here's an example. I'm communicating with this senator here now, so Pennsylvania is likely to do that. For more details on what the audit should be, it's in this report, post-election audits report. Lastly, our recommendations report has an unparalleled wealth of information as to what we should be doing going forward. It lists 30 actions that state and federal government ought to take. We're going to have a video out about this next week, a short little video that summarizes it, but the report itself is at electionintegrity.info. You want my emails on there, so you can also sign up for our Media Balance newsletter. So I'm going to end on this thought. It's up to you to do critical thinking about societal changes we have, and it's up to you to speak up and defend your rights. If you are lackadaisical about it, there's no doubt that you will be squashed like a bug. Thank you for your attention. I hope this gives you a little more information on election integrity than you had before, and I'll be glad to take some questions.